And welcome to Media Mash. Tonight, the most outrageous examples about how liberal mainstream media bias is out there spinning the Obama administration's efforts in Libya. And back with us is the president of the Media Research Center, the one and only Brent Bozell. Brother Bozell, how are you?
Dr. Hannity, how are we doing tonight?
You're a great American. Thank me. All right. Okay, that's an inside joke for all the Mark Levin fans out there. All right, so I keep talking about this suck up to Obama because I want another interview syndrome. Let me give you the latest example. Diane Sawyer, it's rather than confronting Obama over his inconsistencies and incoherent policy, this is what she does.
What about the famous quote from another beleaguered president, Abraham Lincoln, who said he had been driven many times to his knees because his own wisdom and that around him was insufficient for the day?
I do a lot of praying, absolutely, every night, right before I go to bed.
Just a final question. How much do you think Kentucky will win by?
Diane, I will make this point. You know, a lot of folks focused on the fact that I'd filled out my bracket. Obviously, I hadn't been spending that much time studying it since I don't have anybody in the Final Four.
No, I don't suck up to Obama. He won't come near me, Brent. He's not coming on this program. Can't believe it.
Well, that's, you know, why don't they just hold his hand while they're doing these, they're doing these comforting hand-holding exercises? Do you realize, Sean, she had not 30 seconds, not 60 seconds, she had 10 minutes with him. And we watched this. There's not one single tough question. And what you've got is controversy swirling all over this administration. Not one the toughest question was who he thought was going to win the Final Four.
All right. Now, this takes the cake. Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, who we just had on, she's on with Matt Lauer. Now, do we have to show compassion to al-Qaeda? I can't even believe I'm asking this question. Roll the tape.
Let me flip that coin on its other side. If there are flickers, as you say, of al-Qaeda among the rebels, would it not be a sign to them or showing them that the United States has compassion and we're willing to use our military might to help all people?
Compassion for al-Qaeda?
No, compassion for civilians in Benghazi.
Well, of course we have compassion for people.
Show al-Qaeda. Hello, Brent. Show al-Qaeda our compassion. If we just reach out a little further to the terrorists, they may like us. We may have peace at our time.
Sean, this is one of the most astonishingly naive questions I've ever heard. I mean, let's go back to World War II. If after Pearl Harbor we'd only send an arms shipment to Tokyo, we'd be okay. No. I mean, he's saying if we arm al-Qaeda, they'll like us better.
That's crazy.
What is going on over at NBC?
Yeah. All right, let's take it a step further. Do you know Obama has had the toughest presidency? Not Ronald Reagan, not George Bush after 9/11. No, Obama has had the toughest job since FDR. How do we know? The suck up to Obama media tells us so.
I think you can nitpick what happened in Egypt, Obama policy in Egypt and Libya, but in general, I think they've been extremely deft in a very tough situation.
You said that you haven't, in your memory, you can't recall a time where a president has faced a confluence of events like the confluence of events taking place right now. Just explain that.
Well, in my adult lifetime, certainly FDR did have these challenges, but in my adult lifetime and as a reporter, here you have a president who has 2 wars underway, is engaged in really what is a 3rd war. And then we have here at home a recession that we cannot completely get out of yet, and political paralysis in Washington over the budget. All of that has arrived at the Oval Office at the same time.
Why don't we have his face on Mount Rushmore now?
You know, it's amazing. Here's what's going on, Sean. They can't blame George Bush anymore. Yeah. So now they're blaming the world. Now they're blaming events. Look what Brokaw says. 3 wars. Wait a minute. Didn't Barack Obama get us out of Iraq? Didn't he say it was over? And where Libya's concerned, he got us into that war. Yeah. It's not that somebody caused it. He got us into that. I mean, why don't they hold him accountable for anything? And they're now blaming the world. It's the world's problem. You know, by the way, I would love to see the reaction on Abraham Lincoln's face to know that Barack Obama had it worse than he did.
That's a good point. But all of his critics are feckless and inconsistent because the media tells us so.
Ted Koppel, what about the Republican opposition? I mean, is it principled here, Or is it much more feckless and inconsistent? Because many of them wanted a no-fly zone, then said it was too little, too late, then said, as Newt Gingrich said, well, no, you shouldn't have intervened at all. They either sound inconsistent or a lot more like President Bush, who became quite unpopular within Republican circles and the country writ large on the war.
Feckless, inconsistent. You know, because you dare to disagree. You dare to ask about all the inconsistencies. How dare you?
Right. Let's talk about feckless and inconsistent. Does that make the Obama administration feckless and inconsistent in that his Secretary of Defense said this was a disastrous idea? Does that make them feckless and inconsistent? No. It makes for honest disagreement. But Republicans can't have honest disagreement without their motives being brought into question.
All right, we got one last clip tonight, and the networks ignore Hillary's Assad is a reformer statement. Let's roll this.
There is a different leader in Syria now. Many of the members of Congress of both parties who have gone to Syria in recent months have said they believe he's a reformer. What's been happening there the last few weeks is deeply concerning. But there's a difference between calling out aircraft and indiscriminately strafing and bombing your own cities than police actions, which frankly have exceeded the use of force that any of us would want to see.
Syria, state sponsor of terror for how long?
You know, Sean, it's amazing. The real story here is the emerging, raging incompetence of the State Department. It was Hillary Clinton's own State Department that just 2 weeks before that interview put out a report about all the human rights abuses of that country. And she's defending them as a reformer. That was the story they didn't cover.
Yeah. All right, Prem Bozell, as always, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Sean.
No shortage of media bias. Time now to check in with the one and only, well, you're home tonight.
I know, can I tell you, I just barely made it. I just landed a few minutes ago, so bear with me. This tease is going to be rough. But anyway, we have
nobody wanted a
Lady.
2-hour Hannity tonight, you know, Greta.
Actually, the viewers already got it. Almost got it, and they would have loved it. Anyway, former President Bush and former First Lady Laura Bush go on the record. Plus, we're going to do the very latest in Libya. Lots of breaking news there. And I will be ready at the top of the hour. I promise you, I'm scrambling, but I will be ready.
How did you get President Bush to talk about Libya? You are relentless.
Did I say he's not talking about Libya? Did I just say he's talking about Libya?
Yeah, I thought, well,
I will be ready at 10,
I'll have to watch. I know the trick. I have to watch to find out, but I'll be watching in 19 short minutes.
I don't think it's about Libya. I really don't think that. All right, back to you.
Let not your heart be troubled. Our great American panel next. And tonight on our great American panel, she's a fellow with Project 21, a columnist with the Daily Caller, Fox News contributor. Deneen Borelli is back. He is a Democratic pollster, Fox News contributor. Doug Schoen is with us. She's currently a bureau chief in the Kings County District Attorney's Office Homicide Division in Brooklyn, New York. And Siga Nicolazzi, right?
Yes, that is right.
Sweating that. All right. Good to see you. Your first time. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Let's start with we've talked a lot about Van Jones and 9/11 truther, et cetera, but we have another tape of Van Jones literally blaming 9/11 on the government. It's a full screen, and words that we found of him, and he said, quote, it's the bombs that the government has been dropping around the world that are now blowing up inside the U.S. borders. And my question is, how does somebody that is this outrageous get hired by a president with a high-ranking job? How does that happen?
I don't know how it happens, how this guy falls through the cracks when all of this was known beforehand. I mean, this is not the only things he's done. He had advocated on behalf of a cop killer. And not only as a homicide prosecutor does that offend me, but as a citizen, that this is someone who makes it into the upper echelon.
You lost friends on 9/11 like we all did here.
And who didn't, and even those who didn't personally, we all lost people because they're part of our country, and the world at large lost incredible loss. And to say this the day afterwards,
unbelievable,
and then to make it into weird.
Well, the Sunday afterwards, you know, let's put it all together. America's chickens came home to roost. Came the Sunday.
I'm a Democrat. I'm a mainstream Democrat. Believe in democratic values.
I know.
This is outrageous.
It is.
This guy. And you know what? We're all Americans. This guy's values are not what I think are mainstream American values, not by a long shot.
No, it's totally outrageous. And, you know, you have to remember that Van Jones is the leading cheerleader for the green jobs movement Obama wants to bring what's going on in Spain over to the U.S. regarding green jobs. We all know that it's not working. But this is a radical. We know what he's all about. And I am outraged, actually, that our tax dollars was paying his salary when he was in the White House. That's what's really crazy.
All right, Louis Farrakhan, we played the tape the other day, he said to Obama, who the hell do you think you are? Remember, Farrakhan and Wright went to visit Gaddafi back in 1984. Let's roll the latest Farrakhan tape here.
I love Muammar Gaddafi, and I love our president. It grieves me to see my brother president set a policy that would remove this man not only from power, but from the earth.
Now, there was an interesting comment by Malik Zulu Shabazz, who recently said, well, you sat at Farrakhan's table. Do you think, having lived 2 blocks apart, that it's a legitimate, fair question to say, Mr. President, did you know Louis Farrakhan? Were you friends with Louis Farrakhan? Or is that Hannity going off the deep end like he did on Ayers and Wright?
Well, it's a legitimate question, because why not always ask the question? I mean, do I think that there's anything between Farrakhan and Obama? No. I mean, if anything, if Farrakhan is spouting...
You don't think they knew each other?
It's not that they know each other, but
friends?
Come on, it's Farrakhan.
Should we know if they ate dinner, considering he's a virulent anti-Semite and racist?
Sure, we can know that, but chances are when he is calling Obama the first Jewish president as part of his anti-Semitic rants, that these are not two that have had a history.
So I had a different reaction. When I hear Louis Farrakhan saying that he's worried about taking Muammar Gaddafi from this earth, what do you say to the families who were the victims of that Pan 103? What do you say to them? This is just...
What about my other question about, is it something that I think a question, because we're going to watch and we're going to be able to compare and contrast all the Republican candidates. They're going to get in, and the scrutiny, it's going to be, worse than a colonoscopy. I'm just going to be honest about
I'd rather scrutinize Obama's
policies. But
policies.
Obama has not gotten that scrutiny. Is this a legitimate question that he should have been asked, considering he had pretty radical associations in the past?
At this point, I think more important is what's he going to do about the economy? What's he going to do to articulate a policy
I'm going to get to
avoid?
That next, but is this a fair question?
It's a fair question, but there's no evidence to suggest that the two have any links.
Are we really going to know? Will the truth really come out? But regarding Farrakhan, he's a radical. He's made some really awful comments about Jewish people.
Would it mean anything if they were friends? If they did eat dinner together, if they did, counsel each other, would that mean anything?
That's very concerning. I mean, he's the leader of the free world, and he's hanging out with these radicals.
Earlier,
There's a long
even
list.
if it was earlier in his life.
There's a long list and a long pattern of people. I mean, we could spend, the entire segment talking just about the people he associated with.
All right, we got a lot to get to, including John Boehner's comments that have some Tea Party members upset. We'll have more with our great, great, great American panel right after the break. And we continue now with our great American panel. All right, John Boehner, Speaker of the House. We have a government shutdown scheduled for a week from tomorrow. And here's what he said.
Here's the bottom line. Democrats are rooting for a government shutdown. We're listening to the people who sent us here to cut spending so that we can grow our economy. As I've said from the beginning, our goal is to cut spending, not shut down the government. And you've heard a lot of talk over the last 24 hours. There's no agreement on numbers, and nothing will be agreed to until everything is agreed to. We control 1/2 of 1/3 of the government here, but we're going to continue to fight for the largest spending cuts that we can get to keep the government open and funded through the balance of this fiscal year.
All right. What scared me and a lot of conservatives, well, we only control 1/2 of 1/3 of the government here. We're going to continue to fight for the largest spending cuts. Now, they had promised and made a very specific promise, the $61 billion that they passed, to their credit, but it seems like there's some wiggle room there.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Now, the big cuts are going to come when Paul Ryan releases his budget next week, and I spoke to him earlier today. My fear is, though, that conservatives, if they don't stand firm on this, how are they going to stand firm on entitlement reform and the $7 trillion plus that Paul Ryan and the Republicans want to pass in next year's budget if they can't stand for $61 billion?
Well, that's the big problem here. I mean, while it's important to look at this discretionary spending because it gives us a view on what government's view is of spending at the time, entitlements is really the hard road ahead of us.
Right,
I mean, that is where we have to really cut.
But if the argument is now, well, we can't get the $61 billion because we're going to get blamed for the shutdown, and we only control 1/3 of the government here, when they do have the power to stand firm, it seems like they may be too timid and afraid of a shutdown.
And they're playing directly into the Democrats' hands because internal Republican division shows not only discord, but the lack of principle, allowing Obama to mouth homilies and win political support. So ultimately, John Boehner is doing our bidding.
But the House flipped for a reason, and the American people put the conservative politicians in office to rein in government gone wild. So if they're going to start backing down now, who knows what's going to...
They already have, Denise. Well, Boehner's negotiating behind closed doors with the Democrats.
They don't have a deal. He even said it in this comment. But look, I say this, and I don't think they understand the mentality that this election was historic for a reason.
They don't understand the mentality. That's why it plays to the Democrats' advantage, because Boehner's misreading it.
Is he afraid of a shutdown?
He's afraid of standing up for principle, which is what the American people want. Hence, he's allowing the Democrats to come back into a game that they lost.
Who are the most popular politicians today? Governors Jindal, Bob McDonnell, John Kasich, Marco Rubio in Florida, Mike Pence, Michelle Chris Christie. Why are they so popular? Because they're bold and they don't back down.
I'm agreeing with you, Sean, but that's the mistake Republicans are making. You have the establishment.
No, they're about to make.
Well, you'll see the mistakes going to get made.
If they make this mistake, then I don't think they understand what's going to happen.
But Sean, you should take them on.
I am taking them on. I'm saying don't do it. Don't compromise.
Harder.
If you do, you are going to be defeated.
And they're going to do it, and they will be defeated.
That's not why the American people put them in office, and we want government reined in because it's totally out of control with the spending and the debt.
Exactly. Why are they not taking this opportunity to educate the American people? You got the big spenders on the left. You got conservatives, constitutional,
unable to see principle. They have to deal, and it will be their undoing.
If they think that they're going to be able to say, well, we're going to do it in the next budget, they're making a mistake, because the Democrats will hold that shutdown over their head and call them extreme then. So why not fight over this?
Precisely.
I mean, a lot of these congressional freshmen, they were elected specifically on this platform of reducing the budget and our deficit. And so if they're not even doing this here, they're going to be out the next time around.
But ultimately, to me, it's going to be Obama's fault, because this is under his watch.
Now, I'm going to tell you,
Denise, I
may disagree with you. Because if the Republicans don't fulfill their promise and stand on their principle...
No, they need to. But Obama, he's the president of the United States, and he has been pretty much AWOL with this issue.
They've got to fight on this $61 billion. They've got to fight for entitlement reform. They've got to fight for a balanced budget amendment. They better understand. They'll be supported. They'll be cheered as heroes that are changing the culture.
Sean, the word I get from the White House is that they are doing nothing on entitlements, nothing on the budget, because they see the Republicans self-destructing.
By doing it?
That the Republicans are self-destructing.
Wait a minute. The Republicans, Paul Ryan, I talked to him today. He seemed, listen, he convinced me today. Well, Paul Ryan's he's doing their budget.
Plus, Cantor's out there trying to promote a coup against Boehner as we speak. So there's chaos on the right, and the Democrats are laughing all the way, literally, to the bank.
Well, I got to tell you, the country, this isn't the time for half measures or political infighting or power
I'm for Bowles-Simpson. We got to do serious, balanced budget initiatives on a bipartisan basis now.
All right. How'd you like your first time on the
I'll
show?
be back.
We'd love to have you back. All right. You even signed our football. All right. That is all the time we have left this evening. Thank you all for being with us. And thank you out there for being with us. We toss it.